And moved by Dave, seconded by Mark. All those for? Yep.
Page 205, item 22. 205, the confirmation of LGNZ Zone 2 representatives recommending Councillor McPherson and Councillor Southgate are put forward as representatives for LGNZ Zone 2.
I just have one question. Thank you. If they, because those three elected members' fund costs to go to these things are covered, so it doesn't come out of their own personal budget. If they don't go, can someone be subbed in and have that budget covered, or is that a bit difficult to do? No. Can we do that? Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think they've been going to them, but
it's such an exciting, riveting agenda. Mostly, I think a lot of people clamouring for the opportunity.
Deputy Mayor.
I know.
I just wanted, I'm very moved because please note that the media is present for this critically important item.
All those for? Any against? Just in time, Gary.
Sorry, I had a mouthful of apple.
You have your nickname, Justin.
Just in time. That issue about the expenses, that wouldn't matter if expenses were claimed on an actual basis, is that right? So am I, by that assumption, I'm assuming that perhaps they're getting expenses, some apportioned amount of expenses rather than they when they go to these things, I guess they claim for mileage and... Yeah, that's all. So then you don't, then if that's the case and someone subs in, that person would just submit an expense claim. That is an actual expense claim.
That's how the thing's facilitated. It's a question of which budget it comes out of, which was Councillor Leary's point. And we're saying, if Councillor McPherson decides he can't make it, but he deputises you to go in his place, then rather than coming out of your conference budget, or coming out of the conference by resolution.
By resolution or whatever it is. Okay. Thank you. Gotcha.
Can I just mention, Becca's quite rightly pointed out, if we were going to be entirely appropriate about this, if you're going to allow for alternates, we should just slightly amend the wording of the resolution to acknowledge that. If you want other people to be allowed to travel on the...
Do we really want to name
the other 10 councillors as alternates?
Do we just say or alternate and it would be fine? Okay.
Or alternate,
And Uncle Tom Cobley.
Because, for example, none of us are going. Are you going tomorrow, Martin? Yeah. So that's the trick. We can't go because of the clash in this instance. But it's always good to have someone there.
Okay, all those for? Any against? Carried. Okay, now we're moving to the supplementary paper that we've got here. It's this one here. The one on the waters. Thank you, Blair. We'll take the report as read and understood. We'll now open for questions. Okay, there are no questions. We move to debate. Okay, Councillor Paula.
So this shed, it's where to start really. This shed, I was at the presentation for as long as I could be yesterday with the Scottish Waters and the authors of the report, and it was very interesting. This recommendation is based on a shared model of the three councils, isn't it?
The recommendation is based on a non-asset owning structure.
That's right.
Which is different to Scottish Waters.
Yeah.
So this is the model that our council has previously.
Oh no, I'm aware of that, but it's a three-council model.
It's well, it can be any number. It can be anywhere from two councils, scalable.
The finances as
right. So the Mott McDonald report attached is looking at three councils.
It's based on three councils, because I do think that's important, because we do need to get all three councils over the line, or this looks a little different. And as you say, potentially you could get other local authorities to come in on this model if they were inclined or interested.
That's certainly been the discussion between both Waipa and Hamilton, that this model would be well suited for other councils. I should just note that Waikato has already made its position clear that they favour an asset-owning CCO. They are currently going through a process where they are preparing a comprehensive business case looking at the asset-owning CCO model being themselves and an asset-owning CCO, along with a strategic relationship with Watercare and Tainui, and they're going to compare that to the Shared Waters Management Company. So they haven't made that final decision. They've passed a resolution about a year ago saying they support an asset-owning model, and until they make a new decision, that's their position at the present time. But you are quite correct, Councillor Paula. This process leaves the door completely open for Waikato, and in fact says to Waikato, we would like you to be part of this Shared Waters Management Company model.
That's right, and I just wanted to just clarify that all the money in here, in the Mott MacDonald report, all the potential savings are all based on a 3-council scenario, so we've got to keep that in the back of our mind. And just another question, I was really intrigued by the diagram that was shown yesterday on page 17 of 62. In the conclusion, where it's got the 3 ticks or 2 ticks or whatever in terms of outcome, and the asset owning model out-achieves the shared waters management model on most things except for the ease of implementation.
That's correct.
So at the end of the day, we do need to remember or refresh people to the fact that an asset-owning model, not anything to do with who that might be, but an asset-owning model would have delivered the ratepayers considerably more savings.
Yes, I think you're quite correct. You'll recall, councillors, that the last time we talked about, there was a diagram that showed that the asset-owning model delivered the greatest financial benefits, but from a risk perspective, it had the highest set-up risk, but over time its risk came down. So that's speaking to exactly what you're saying there.
Yeah,
and so the asset-owning model remains the optimal model, but our council has considered that and decided for those other reasons, non-asset-owning model, Shared Waters Management Company, is our preference.
But I just wanted to bring the fact, clarify the fact and have it back on the radar.
Yes, you're quite correct.
Because I might make some comments in my debate.
Excuse me, just Councillor Paula, sorry to interrupt. Just where there's a revised staff recommended resolution up there as well for councillors to take note of, the red lines and an amendment.
It's just an addition, isn't it?
Just an addition, that's correct. Sorry, Councillor Paula.
That's fine, thank you. I haven't got a question on that. I guess, yeah, I'll probably have some more questions at some stage, but I just want to hear how everyone else feels about it, and I'll definitely have some debate.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. Just picking up what Paula said, and maybe a little bit of confusion was because the actual recommendation only talks about 2, ourselves and Waipart, doesn't it?
That's correct.
So there's no...
Talks about the 2 councils consulting. This is obviously a process of consulting with the public on the proposition. It certainly does not in any way close the door on Waikato being part of this proposal. It's an opportunity for our 2 councils to talk to the public prior to Christmas, noting that Waikato won't have made its decision until about Christmas time anyway.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving to debate.
Oh, sorry, just one other question.
One lot of questions, sorry, Councillor Paula, unless it's a clarification or something new that's come up.
The structure of the organisation and whether or not metering was applied are separate issues in this, aren't they?
Yes, so this has nothing to do with the automated
Nothing to do
vote.
with, that's right, thank you.
That decision absolutely remains the decision of this council under that structure.
Okay, moving to debate. Councillor Paula.
Okay, I'm going to support the staff recommendation.
So I'll move, and Councillor Dave will second.
Okay, thank you. It was actually very interesting to attend that water conference yesterday and listen to Scottish Water. I know they have some differences, but they have a lot of similarities, and Mott MacDonald were there. I was, in fact, the only councillor there, which was a shame because actually there was a lot of really good information shared. And what I particularly struck me, and why I raised the question around the asset owning model, is that it is a public company in Scotland. It's a public company and it has public accountability and public oversight, but it is an asset owning CCO, and they made the point that the considerable savings in OPEX could only have been achieved in an asset owning model. Yesterday we were talking about whether we should spend $500,000 extra on a promised park to the community, And already this council has made some pretty big decisions that would prevent it saving considerably larger sums of money than 500,000, in fact, into the 50 millions. So I just make that point because I do think it's important. But what I did hear from Mott MacDonald yesterday that I accept is that this is a step on the journey, and I believe local government has been given a steer from government around water quality, drinking quality water, around better management of wastewater, and that's a requirement. I don't think this is the ultimate solution. I think this is a very diluted solution to what we could have achieved, but we have to do something because we are obliged to work in a way that saves ratepayers' money and dries up efficiency. And I was absolutely astounded that a company like Scottish Water could reduce the number of assets, increase the customer service and increase operational efficiency, reduce the OPEX by 40% in 4 to 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you, in 4 to 5 years. And not only that, they went from a low-performing 63% of customer satisfaction, because they're focused on customer delivery, to an astounding 90% of customer satisfaction. And incidentally, they do not meter the residents. They don't. They meter businesses in the same way we do. They have some metering to monitor the flows of water, but the charging is differently attributed, and they've been able to operate water services well under inflation for a considerable amount of time. I thought it was an excellent presentation. I'm just sad that not everyone else got to see it, because it really confirmed in my mind that we've gone a little bit too far in terms of weakening what could have been an excellent proposal.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Rigorous debate. I put on record that I rang Chris Allen yesterday morning to say I couldn't go, and I asked Chris Allen to undertake a copy of the presentation in circulation. I was in Auckland and couldn't be there, but certainly happy to see a copy of that presentation in the spirit of good, open-minded debate, discussion and reflection. And obviously, whatever happens to our water endeavour is totally subject to the majority view of this council. However, I think the recommendation in front of us is taking us on an appropriate journey, and that appropriate journey ensures that there is public ownership and public control. Having not lived under Scottish Water, but years ago I lived under Yorkshire Water, which I think was owned by a Quebec or a French pension fund, and we certainly had meters, and we certainly paid meter fees to a bunch of private shareholders. So that was the opposite type of model.
Councillor Gary.
I just want to put on record that I rang Dave McPherson to ask him if he could get me the papers for the from the presentation, and he told me he wasn't going either, so bugger it. So yeah, I endorse what Martin says. If hopefully Chris got some stuff and we can... Did you go, mate?
Oh, I didn't, but Martin got some stuff.
Did you ring Dave as well?
Look, I'll circulate.
Thank you. You got them. Good work. Okay. I just have a question for Paula when she says Scottish Water was publicly owned.
We're in debate.
Yeah, well,
No questions. You can ask a question, but don't expect a reply.
Okay, hopefully this will work out. You said publicly owned. Publicly owned, do you mean that because that means publicly listed on the stock exchange, or do you mean owned by a government type thing?
Gary,
which one is it?
Gary, we're in debate.
So,
Can't get an answer.
okay, so by publicly, okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm surprisingly enough agreeing with a lot of what Paul has said. I was a big advocate of the asset-owning CCO and was reasonably vocal about that. Am a begrudging advocate of a non-asset-owning CCO because I don't think, for all of the reasons Paula said, as she learnt from the presentation. So I will support this, although it does concern me that we're kind of hobbling the beast that we're going to be measuring our performance on, because we're not letting it get underway with its asset owning, which is where most of the, well, a heck of a lot of the economies of scale will come from. So I am concerned that to the extent this is an experiment in this sort of delivery service, I don't think we're giving the thing that we're testing a fair chance, because we're not setting it up in what I would consider to be the best and most efficient format. Having said that, this is a halfway house, which is always a risky way to go, but I will be supporting the just going into public consultation. Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Thanks. This isn't a halfway house, this is the end result, and anything future will be able to be looked at in future by the council. This is not a step on the path to anywhere else, it's an end result in itself. And for the two speakers that have said suggest it's a halfway house, sorry, you're wrong. That's not part of the proposition. You may yourselves view it as that, and I can understand certain logic that might head you in that direction, but I assure you that this proposal that we've got in front of us that we're consulting on is the end result of what's being put to people. So, and I can remind you that the previous proposal for an asset owning CCO from the last council had water meters tied up in it donkey deep, and if you did want to relitigate that, could you please do it about 6 months out from the next election and be my guest?
Point of order, and this is genuine. To any public,
you mean your other ones aren't?
To any members of the public listening, this is a process for consultation. So clearly, this is not the fight. Well,
Gary, that's not a point of order. Just Gary, be quiet. Let the member finish, please.
But I think he's misinforming.
Gary, you can.
If I'm misinforming, I've just been watching too many of those debates on TV at night. I think there's an $11.7 billion hole in here somewhere too. I'm just annoyed to hear councillors saying this is a step along the right direction, or it's a halfway house, when it's a proposal in its own right. And it's not just a half-assed proposal that's been thought up at this council, it's been thought up at looking what works elsewhere in New Zealand, down in Wellington Water, for instance, where a number of us went, and there is no proposal there to go from a non-asset owning to an asset owning CCO. The steps that they've taken to get a non-asset owning CCO up and running, and that's the end of the question down there, and that's what we had a look at and decided to continue.
It's moved by James, seconded by myself.
Thanks. I won't be too much longer. In terms of the requirement from governments, is to improve water quality, to ensure security of supply and things like that. It is not for a particular structure. And we could have, for instance, had the original proposal from Councillor Gallagher of a shared service arrangement and achieved much of what the government was insisting on. In fact, we could have achieved that, and we were in fact achieving that through our own good work of our own facilities and staff. So we've done this because there's some imperative to be able to work well together with other councils. The help is going to be much more for the smaller councils around us than for us. It's not going to make things worse, but it's not going to improve our situation anywhere near as much as it will improve theirs with the economy of scale that can be achieved. So I'll leave it there.
Councillor Ange.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I'm voting against the motion. The last time this came to us, I pulled the plug for myself on this issue. It has changed over time, and it's been actually, I think the discussion has been really, really good, and I think that our governance group has done a really great job to date, given a really topical issue. But I'm not convinced with the reduced councils in here and the reduced, not that I was convinced around the big CCO anyway, but just I guess how we've tracked and looking over our records, we do this exceptionally well. I think the majority, I think Councillor McPherson is absolutely right for different reasons, that the smaller councils are going to benefit from our assets, from our management and from our infrastructure a lot more than we will benefit from joining up here. So, yeah, the journey for me is over on this one. I guess we'll go out, I'll probably be alone on that, but we'll go out for consultation and see what happens, and I will keep an open mind, but I can't support it going further at this point.
Who moved this? Who is? I did. Okay, I won't take my right of reply, so we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is carried, 10 for, 1 against.
Okay, so we're now moving to item 24, Waikato Innovation Park, which once again is one of the papers that has been circulated. Thank you, Blair. We'll take the report as read and we'll open for questions. Blair, is there anything you want to add?
Just very briefly, Mayor Andrew, it's a real pleasure to be able to present to Council the fact that we actually have achieved a very robust outcome on this process. Whilst the sale that's in front of you today is not unconditional, it is certainly subject to a term sheet, which is obviously in the confidential papers. We have a very good purchaser. Again, I can't name that person because it's still yet to be an unconditional deal. But it's a very exciting outcome for the city and I guess in terms of our aspirations to grow the park with a purchaser who's going to do so, but also for council to free up some cash from an investment and enable council to use that for other purposes. So what's in front of you today is a series of resolutions that supplement those resolutions previously given to the Chief Executive. Given the complexity of this deal, we felt that the resolutions that Richard had weren't quite necessarily sufficient in some areas. So rather than take a risk and ask Richard to exercise delegations where there was some uncertainty, I've covered off everything with some additional resolutions here.
Okay, we're going straight to debate. Okay, we're going straight to the vote. We need a mover and a seconder first. Moved by James, seconded by Mark. All those for? Any against? Carried unanimously. Note that Councillor Paul is out of the room. Okay. So we now move to resolution to exclude the public, item 25, page 206. Moved by Councillor Marks, seconded by Councillor Leo. All those for, any against?
Sorry, Mary,
Yep, sure.
I just had a question on, given we don't